The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. November 16th, 2020, the Phoenix Suns traded for Chris Paul. December 14th, 2020, ESPN predicted the Suns would be in the play-in tournament and out of the top 7 in the West. And then on April 28th, 2021, the Suns ended the second longest playoff drought in the NBA and secured a top 6 seed in the West. May 15th, 2021, the Suns clinched a top 2 seed in the NBA. 8 days later, experts at ESPN almost unanimously picked the Suns to lose to the Lakers in the first round.
Shout out Bobby Marks.
Yeah, shout out Bobby Marks. Then on June 30th, 2021, the Phoenix Suns won the Western Conference to make the NBA Finals for the first time in 28 years. And then on July 20th, the Suns lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, ending possibly the best and most surprising season of their 53 years. Even though they squandered their biggest opportunity in the NBA Finals, at every other chance they exceeded expectations, whether that be defying even the most grand predictions or making 8 3-pointers in an NBA playoff game. The Suns surprised everyone this year. My name is Mike. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
Hi, I'm okay. A couple days later, many of you, I'm sure, have noticed that we have been in the habit of recording these episodes after every single game for the entire playoffs. It's been really fun. And then we didn't do that a couple days ago. We sort of called an audible and decided that it would be better. Because let's be honest, no one was in the mood and it would have sucked. So, yeah. But a couple days later, I'm okay. I'm feeling having more of a capacity to be grateful now.
Yeah.
And look back at what we did. And that's what we're going to do on this episode. We're going to look back at just give some of our final thoughts, be a little bit more reflective on the season. But then also look forward to the future too. You know, I think the reason it's only a couple days later and the reason this already doesn't sting all that bad, I mean, don't get me wrong, it sucks that you were right there, but this doesn't feel like 2010. You know, this doesn't feel like Steve Nash crying in the locker room, knowing that it's his last opportunity. You know, you've got a good foundation here. A whole platoon of young players who outperformed arguably their expectations for their first playoff run. And this is something that you can continue to build on. So hopefully it's just a start, but I feel okay.
It's a weird thing where the team that loses the NBA Finals almost doesn't have the time to like properly reflect back onto the season and appreciate the season that just happened, because it ends and then the offseason just starts immediately after that. The draft is in a few days, or a week from today when we're recording this, and then free agency a few days after that. It's almost like if the Suns lost in the Western Conference Finals or sometime before that, we would have had more time, more of an opportunity to appreciate the season that came before this. But the one team that has the least amount of time to reflect on what came before is the team that loses in the NBA Finals. And look, it's really, it hurt. It sucked. And you're right, Sam, we didn't want to record immediately afterwards because, one, it would have been really hard for me and I think really hard for you. And two, I don't know that anyone was ready to listen to something.
It would have sounded stupid. Like it just would have been this highly emotional kind of, you know, and I don't blame anyone for doing that, giving their instant reactions, but it wasn't what people needed.
Yeah, and imagine doing like a breakdown of the basketball.
Like, yeah,
it felt stupid too.
It's just stupid.
There's no game coming after that.
What do you talk about? Yeah, the Bucks had their parade. I congratulated them on Twitter already. You know, I hold no ill will towards the city of Milwaukee, towards Giannis, who had a fantastic series. Our guy PJ Tucker won a ring. You know, I saw some of the pictures. He was pretty lit at the parade today. He was super extreme PJ Tucker, to say the least. But yeah, I mean, here we are, and like you said, not much time to reflect now. But you know what? It almost sucks more for us than it does for the front office because you already know James Jones has put in the time. His scouts have been doing their work. I mean, you could say maybe the draft has not been James Jones's strong suit always, at least with scouting. I don't know. You could maybe argue that. But I'm sure his scouts have been doing their work regardless of what's going on in the playoffs. They've got guys in the front office who are doing their research regardless on say, free agency, regardless of what's going on in the playoffs. I'm sure they have a strategy and they're ready for the quick turnaround. But for us, yeah, it's kind of weird that we're just going to do like this one episode of reflection and then bam, it's right back into off-season stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted to do it. So I appreciate you being into it too, Sam, because I think it just... It was a fun ride. It was a really great run for the Suns. And you're right, as far as James Jones goes, once the playoff starts, his work for this season, the season that just ended, was done. So I'm sure they had moved on to next season far before that. And the good news is it shortens the sort of not draft guy season for you and I to try to cover the draft.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest perks. We got the 29th pick. We're going to bring on some guests next week who can help us cover some research, but you guys know my philosophy. If you've listened to the podcast for more than a year, my philosophy tends to be who the hell cares? So, yeah, I look forward to talking about that, and we will defer to some other expertise, but this episode is not about that.
Yeah. And for those who haven't listened to us in an off-season previously, we're just not draft experts. We give our opinions once we see them play, and we watch basketball and we learn. But I think the amount of basketball you have to watch to like truly be a draft expert is just so much.
Well,
and so we try to not claim that.
The amount of bad basketball that you have to watch. Like
yes.
I love, if you're a new listener, I love free agency. I love talking about guys who are potential fits and optimizing their roles and going back and watching film on other players, scouting other players in the league. But that's because everyone's on the even playing field where you kind of know if a guy's an NBA player because they're playing the same competition. College is such a crapshoot. I don't even try to touch that with a 10-foot pole. It's so hard. But yeah, we'll get to that.
It's too much. It's too boring. The shot clock's too long. It's too tough to watch. So shout out to the people who do it. So we don't have to. And every year we have great guests that help us out with the draft. And once they're in the NBA, we can give you pretty solid opinions on them at that point. But before that, it's tough. And the draft is a crapshoot, and we're just not draft guys. So anything else that you want to cover before we get into what we want to do in this episode is cover our most memorable moments, or I think the most fun moments, really, from this run, and just kind of break those down to have a chance to really reflect and appreciate what the Suns just did. Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about, like just in a general sense on the finals and the playoffs?
Not really in a general sense. I'm just ready to kind of talk about some of these guys, I think.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun to do this. What I did, just so you know, is I wrote down a list of all of the moments that just came to my mind off the top of my mind without doing any research. So I wanted to just sort of trust my memory of the playoff run and what moments stood out the most, whether it be like entire games or like individual moments. And then I went through and I sort of filled it out with some research, but I didn't want to like watch a highlight reel of like best moments from the Suns run. I don't even know if that exists. Maybe Sam, maybe we should make it.
I'm sure it does exist, but maybe we can also make it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't want to do that because I just wanted to trust my memory on this and see sort of what stood out in my mind. And I think we could just go back and forth. And I have a list of stuff that I wanted to talk about, and we can just go back and forth. I'm sure we're going to overlap with a few things, and yeah, we'll talk about it.
You want to take the first crack?
Sure. This is one that surprised me. It was a moment in the Nuggets series. It was actually game 1 of the Nuggets series, and I think it was towards the end of the third quarter. And it was in Phoenix, and it was a Torrey Craig alley-oop. And I know you know the exact moment when I say that Torrey Craig alley-oop. But it's just funny how it comes from two bench guys. It was Cameron Payne to Torrey Craig. But the moment I thought what made it cool is it started previously, 2 possessions before that, with Chris Paul taking his patented sort of sidestep 3, where he sizes a guy up at the 3-point line, takes a step to the side with a single right to left crossover and shoots a 3. And that took the Suns' lead to 100-84. This is with 8:53 left. And then on the other side of the floor, a bench guy, Dario Saric, gets a steal, passes it out to Cam Payne, and Campaign lobs it up to Torrey Craig on a fast break, and he slams it home. And I think what made it memorable, the play itself was fun, but the Suns went up pretty dramatically with that by 18 points at that point. But then the shots of the crowd and the moment where this was, I think, one of the first times that arena was essentially full. And to hear the crowd and to see the crowd go wild, and including a shot of, I think, like 6 kids.
Teenagers.
Probably, yeah.
Isn't it crazy how in moments like that, like, you remember the shots of the crowd? There was a cutaway of a bunch of teenage boys doing Fortnite dances.
Going absolutely apeshit, like completely wild, and they were just going insane. And I think that moment, to me, it signified 2 things. One, I think it made me feel more confident about the Suns and where they were at in that Denver Nuggets series. Knowing it was game 1 was one thing, but they were like controlling that game in like a masterful way at that moment. But it signified to me that the Suns fandom was back in a way that it hadn't been in a long time. And 2, I think we saw with those kids, people who probably could be fans for life, like people who could be fans until late in their lives, with memories from this playoff run being there in person that they'll have for a really long time. So that moment really stood out to me. I know you remember it too. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting one to start with, kind of like a metaphorical, the fan base is back. And yeah, I mean, it occurs to me now, we never really got the chance to talk about this. The team did not decide to do a parade. Remember in 93, 300,000 Suns fans came out to support the team that lost to the Bulls. Granted, maybe, Jordan was looked at. I don't really know. I don't like, and so the team decided not to do that this year. Do you have any instant reaction to that decision?
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's just because it feels like they can come back next year. And I know we're gonna have a lot of time to talk about the offseason and what they could do next year. But I think like it. I don't really. I didn't live here in '93, so I don't really understand the logic of that specific parade that they had.
It's like, funny because it was kind of like, just an appreciation fest. And I think something that's interesting is where our society has gone in 28 years, that now, like, even the notion of when it was brought up on Twitter that even as an idea that the Suns might do this, and it never even got to like official planning stages, but it was just brought up by like, I think one of the radio shows on Arizona Sports asked a question, like, should they even consider doing this? And everyone was like, no, no participation trophies and anything. I think it's interesting where we've come in 28 years that is now, like, all my life, for as long as I've been a Suns fan, Suns fans have reminisced fondly about that moment of appreciating what you had even if you lost in 93. Like, that's always been a moment. Like, people share pictures of what that crowd looked like. And, like, I've grown up seeing those pictures of that parade. And now the idea of doing the same thing is like no participation trophies. I just think it's kind of an interesting, I don't know, maybe contradiction there. But I will say I don't mind that they didn't do it. I think, you can look forward to the future and hope that this team, like you said, builds on what they already have. But absolutely, to go back to what you were originally talking about, that moment, just to speak to how the fan base is back, I think this era, and hopefully this overall era of Suns basketball, is going to come to be defined by future success in the next several years. It's not just going to be like a 2020, 2021 thing. But like the Valley jerseys are probably here to stay for a while, right? Yeah. That's like a thing from this season that, like, similar to how, you walk around any college campus in America, and there are certain jerseys that like college boys these days still wear, like Allen Iverson, T-Mac, Raptors jersey, like a Larry Johnson,
Miami Vice
jerseys, Sonics stuff is always like perpetually in. The Valley jersey, I think, I can see it being that. Like, the Valley jersey is going to be just
a hoopster jersey. Is what I call them. Hipster hoops jersey.
It's going to be a hipster hoops jersey of just like even 15 or 20 years from now. I can see people looking back and like kind of viewing that through the lens of it being a slice of life of like what it was like to be a basketball fan in 2020 or 2021. So it's kind of cool. I mean, this Suns team didn't win it all, but have their own small little piece of history, and definitely I feel more confident about where the fan base is going forward, that you can actually like retain fans, retain young fans. Like the other interesting thing is I know Phoenix has this reputation kind of as a transplant city, but I feel like also, I don't live there, but I feel like that's kind of changing, right? Like there are increasingly more people who are just settling down in Phoenix, and maybe the transplants are the adults, but then their kids are Phoenix born and raised, or Phoenix metro area born and raised, and so they become Suns fans. And if you put a good team together here, you have the opportunity to make them Suns fans for life, and I feel like we're starting to see that. So it was really nice.
And I think that happens even as people sort of move out of Phoenix and move away. I mean, we can attest to it. Half of our audience is in Arizona. The other half is from everywhere else, basically. And Suns fan, I think that'll happen with this specific run. And for those kids, I think those are the types of moments when I saw them going wild. It was like, that's the best. That's like the best feeling in sports, and they got to have it. As a fan, it's the best feeling in sports. So it was really cool to see it. But what do you got? Let's hear one of yours.
I want to jump right into a game, like an individual performance from a guy. I don't want to get into any of the key guys quite yet. So the first guy I want to start with is Cam Payne.
Yep.
29 points, 9 assists, game 2 versus the Clippers. This is a game that's like just going to go down in my memory for decades. I'm going to remember the Cam Payne game because like how Cam Payne was already a figure that like I feel like, especially by that point, he had a really good Lakers series, you remember? Like with Chris Paul playing with one arm. Cam Payne definitely stepped up. But I went back and looked at his box score. Just the fact that sort of consistently I said about Cam Payne throughout the regular season, this is a guy, he can get around you. He can turn the corner really quickly. He's got a nice first step. He'll attack the rim. It bothered me a little bit that he didn't look for his own shot more. In fact, in the regular season, he only had 2 games with over 20 points.
Yeah.
So for him to get this opportunity in game 2, and he goes out there and he logs 30-plus minutes because he has to start and he has to be good when we're not at the height of our confidence, given the whole Chris Paul COVID situation at the time. 29 points, 9 assists. I don't have the box score up, actually, so it was either 0 or 1 turnover.
0.
It was 0 turnovers. 0 turnovers. And, of course, that was the Valley-Oop game. Yeah. But and the Valley-Oop is going to be the play that survives on highlight reels for good reason. Immensely, like, perfectly executed play. But Cam Payne leading the way for, like, 3.5 quarters to put them in that position in the first place, because it was a low-scoring game.
Yeah.
I'm always going to remember that game. And off-season talk, not the focus of this episode. Cam Payne is a pending free agent, though. And I really, really hope it's one of our top priorities. I imagine it will be to re-sign that guy, because it was unfortunate. The game after this game was when he twisted his ankle, Mike, and then he just came back. He averaged 7 points per game the rest of the series. He just did not look like the same guy. He had some some stretches. He had some moments. Even in the very last game that we lost to Milwaukee, he kept us in it for a little bit. Remember, he had like a really good stint in the first half just a couple days ago, but he was not the same guy kind of after that ankle injury, which is such a shame because for a while there, I mean, he was just so awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to point out the 0 turnovers because the most assists in the playoffs without a turnover was, of course, Chris Paul, which was in the Nuggets game, which was 15 assists to no turnovers, which is the most Chris Paul game of all time. But number 2 in this playoffs was Cameron Payne with 9 assists to 0 turnovers of all players that played in the playoffs this year.
Among the entire league?
Among the entire league.
That's
the
awesome.
most assists without a turnover in the playoffs was Chris Paul. Number 2 was Cam Payne. By the way, Chris Paul he had 4 out of the top 6 games in this playoffs with assists to turnover ratio there, which is insane, of course, but it's also very, very Chris Paul. But I think it's interesting the way that the narratives, if you will, have been framed for this playoffs in that the Suns' run was sort of defined by injuries for the other team. But what they don't talk about is the one guy that got MVP votes for the Suns this season was Chris Paul. Chris Paul did not play Game 1 and did not play Game 2 against the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Suns, without Chris Paul, their MVP, based on the same people creating these narratives, won both of those games. And in the first one, I'm sure we're going to talk about later, was Devin Booker, but the second game was Cam Payne, who needed to do it because this was also the game where Devin Booker broke his nose. An important other stat about this, an important other moment that happened in this game was that nose breaking. But for a brief period of time, Cameron Payne became absolutely unguardable. But it is fascinating to think that in this specific series, the Los Angeles Clippers series, both players were missing, or both teams were missing essentially what was considered their best player by a lot of people in the first two games, and the Suns won both of those. And I think that's an important note that people don't really talk about a lot. And imagine if Cameron Payne was not injured after that, where would it have gone from there? How much would the Suns have been able to put it on the Clippers after that? Obviously still able to finish it off. But that was actually, I think, one of the most memorable games by any individual player. I had it on my list as well. And Cameron Payne is so insanely likable. And it was just really fun to see him go off when he was needed the most. He started both of those first two games in LA. Those are the only two games he started in the playoffs because Chris Paul was out. And in that second one, he was an absolute star. And it's interesting, too, because, there was a moment we talked about after that game with Dragic, of course, going off against the Spurs. Yeah. And, of course, we drew the comparison between Cameron Payne in that game to Dragic. And Dragic legitimately became an all-star later in his career. He's not like a star player, but he was good enough to be an all-star point guard in the Eastern Conference. And the question, I think, with Cam Payne, when you watch a game like that, is what can his ceiling be? As we go through into this offseason, we're going to be talking about re-signing Chris Paul. I think it's very, very, very likely that Chris Paul returns to the Suns even beyond this next year. And hopefully Cam Payne too, but what can Cam Payne become is going to be a fascinating question, I think, for Suns fans, right?
Yeah, and they were roughly the same age, Dragic and Payne, as when they kind of the seasons that they had just before their breakout. And I'm not talking about when Dragic had like a 26-point game for him or something. Yeah. He was young, but then he had a few more years after that of being just like a backup point guard. If you look at Dragic's kind of final season before he came back to Phoenix for the second time and started to blow up a little bit, he was putting up pretty similar splits to Payne. That's not to make any promises. I think we've seen enough out of Cam now to see that he has his own weaknesses. He struggles with some stuff that definitely makes me question, what's the likelihood of this guy actually being a starting point guard. But I would say there's always a chance, and he definitely needs to be a priority just as another guy who can put the ball on the floor, put some pressure on the rim, drive past guys. His value, his impact is immense, and the Suns need that going forward. So I really hope they bring him back.
Since it happened in that game, I think we should touch on the Valley-Oop too, because
yeah.
What a moment! I mean, that's one of those memorable moments. A play that has a name. Like, people will remember the name of that because of the Valley jerseys, and it was an alley-oop, flawlessly executed play.
What's sad? Is I saw some Bucks fans, Game 5 against the Bucks, the alley-oop that they had to Giannis to close out the game, the Drew steal and then the alley-oop to Giannis where Chris Paul pushed him midair. I saw some Bucks fans referring to that as the the Valley-oop, and I held my tongue, but I wanted to be like, "Fuck you! you don't get to do that. That's that's ours."
Yeah, stop trying to make it happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, theirs was like the higher leverage moment, so I get it, but I don't know.
Yeah, but it wasn't by the team with the Valley jerseys, so I don't even think the Suns were wearing them in that game. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, it was a remarkable play by, I think, the three players I think that had the biggest impact on the play, as we've talked about before. Of course, Jay Crowder with the insane pass, Devin Booker with the broken nose that happened in that game, setting a screen on a massive Zubats, and then, of course, DeAndre Ayton finishing the play and then looking around confused, not really sure if it counted or not.
Don't forget.
Because most people don't know.
Don't forget the understated impact of DeMarcus Cousins in this play to stand in the wrong place as the inbound defender to not even impede Jay Crowder's vision whatsoever. That was really clutch,
that's a good point. Standing in front of him instead of between him and the basket. And then Rondo immediately yelling at him after the play to chastise him for that. But I think that was one of those moments where I think DeAndre Ayton was so incredible up till that point in the playoffs, and that was sort of a moment that sort of capped it off in a way for him. Of course, they played more games after that, but I think it was just such a defining moment for his first playoff run. And that will be the play, because I have another DeAndre Ayton play. Maybe I'll talk about this one now, actually, too. But this specific value, that's one of those plays that Suns fans will remember forever. And actually, I'll just jump into this one, because it's just kind of a small one that I remembered that I'd like to talk about. In Game 1 against the Nuggets as well, This one I just will remember for a few reasons. There was a DeAndre Ayton dunk, and I want to see if you remember this one. It was a high pick and roll.
On Michael Porter Jr.?
On Michael Porter Jr.,
Baptizing
yes.
him? Of course. How could I forget?
And I think there's multiple reasons why this is a fun dunk. And people go back and find it. Just search DeAndre Ayton, Michael Porter Jr., you'll find it. It was the first quarter of game one, early on in the game. High pick and roll by Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton trying to get that trap, which they did. And then Chris Paul, of course, threaded the needle to DeAndre Ayton. But this is a big part of this. DeAndre Ayton caught the ball like 19 feet away from the basket. Took one dribble and dunked it. It's one of those moments where you see DeAndre Ayton do something that is like so Amare Stoudemire-esque that you're almost shocked that he's even capable of doing it because of how rarely he attacks the rim from that position. Mind you, the entire lane opened up because of the spacing the Suns had at that point. And then he dunked on Michael Porter Jr., which was really fun. And then the crowd goes wild, and the camera immediately pans to the mayor of Flavortown himself, Guy Fieri.
I forgot about this.
Who is celebrating with his son, who is wearing a Devin Booker jersey. So this was, I think, a moment where the series started, second round of the playoffs, an insane play by DeAndre Ayton doing something that he's maybe done 2 or 3 times in his entire career, followed by an insane crowd shot by the Suns crowd, and then a Guy Fieri cameo. It almost had everything, but a very memorable dunk by DeAndre Ayton for me.
Yeah, no, that was sick. That was sick. I totally forgot about the Guy Fieri appearance, though. Is he from Phoenix? What's his deal? Or is he just?
I think he's from San Francisco, I think, or maybe even Oakland. Because I know he used to be
weird.
at a lot of Warriors games, but I think he's just one of those rich guys that's just a fan.
I need to look it up. Keep talking for a sec.
I think it really has to do with his son just being a Devin Booker fan. I think he just likes the Suns team. Maybe a Chris Paul thing too. I think some people who have been around the NBA for a while have this sort of lingering attachment to Chris Paul as well.
So he was born in Columbus, Ohio, but then he grew up in California.
Yeah,
and he has licensed his name to restaurants in New York City, Las Vegas, and California. No connection to Phoenix here that I can tell. That's really interesting. I mean, granted, I have no connection to Phoenix, and I would still be there doing the same thing. So credit to you, Guy Fieri. As long as we're on the Devin Booker, the DeAndre Ayton love train, can I talk my favorite Ayton performance, the peak of what was a stellar playoff run in general, but it was really funny, dude. Just as an aside, kind of going through this Clippers series, it kind of made me realize, I don't know if this is a recency bias because it was the most recent series that the Suns won, but just like every game that the Suns won in that series required something kind of legendary. Like that was just an awesome series. And so for DeAndre Ayton, that meant game 4 versus the Clippers. If you remember, it's a physical game. It's a low scoring, like 1980s. 1980s was like the high peak era. Like a 1996,
late 90s,
late 90s type. Suns win 84-80. They steal one in LA, so they go up 3-1. They shoot 36% from the field. The Clippers shoot 33% from the field. Like just a crazy game to have in the playoffs. But DeAndre Ayton, 19 points, 22 rebounds, 3 steals, 4 blocks, 9 offensive rebounds. And just a game where, for lack of a better term, of course, excuse the corniness, but kind of dominating the game with force. It's like an example of the Suns had nothing going in this game if not for Ayton. Chris Paul got to like 20 points, but it took him 20 plus shots to get there. Devin Booker had like 20 points, but it took him 20 plus shots to get there. Like this was not efficient basketball from the Suns. And here you had Ayton with a career high in offensive rebounds, not to mention great hands around the rim, playing the 2-man game with Chris Paul, like elegantly laying it up when Paul would throw the lobs. He just had his hands were fantastic in this game. Combine that with all the extra possessions he was giving you, the straight up defense, guarding guys at the rim, protecting the rim. Just a stellar performance that kind of showed us what DeAndre Ayton was all about. I mean, like this guy is a legendary best rebounder in the NBA when he wants to be, and he just kind of has to unlock that mindset. But it was awesome to see games like this where, frankly, like the Suns stars just didn't have it going, and Ayton kind of proved to us that he was still able to carry the Suns to a victory.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. Generally, he's at his best when he has like a job to do. Whether that be Jokic, go out there and guard Jokic, that's like a thing that he did. Go out there and stop Andre Drummond or guard Anthony Davis. Those are obviously things he did as well. In that Clippers series, I think it took him a little bit to get used to it because his job was to do everything. He kind of had everything. He had to catch the ball in space, find shooters or attack the rim. He had to get on the boards, offensive boards. He had to guard the perimeter. He had to guard the rim. Like, there were so many things that he needed to do in that Clippers series for him to be good and for the Suns to win. And he really did all of them. I mean, it was a remarkable series. It was one of those series for him, I think, where you go, okay, this is really a promising thing to see from someone like him. Like, you can really count on his versatility to do something for you in the playoffs, where I think we weren't really sure before the playoffs. So I mean, we wanted to see it.
It vanquished so much doubt surrounding Ayton, and more specifically, not just Ayton, but kind of the prototype around him. Like, coming out of that series against the Jazz, it was just kind of crazy to watch the progression. I'm talking about the Clippers versus the Jazz, with Rudy Gobert and everyone clowning on Gobert. It was kind of amazing to see the progression from, the narrative being, look at what the Clippers just did to Gobert. Are we sure that Ayton's even going to be able to stay on the floor? That's what people were saying at the beginning of the series. To flipping then to actually look at how well this guy's playing. They need him to continue to play 38, 40 minutes because Dario Saric isn't cutting it, and he needs to do everything. Like, the Suns need to rely on this guy. He's the MVP of their series. That's kind of how it felt by the end of it. It was a remarkable transition to go from step A to step B there for Ayton. And I think, when I look at what he did, he rose up to so many challenges this year in the playoffs. I mean, he guarded Giannis. He guarded Jokic. He guarded Jokic so well. He guarded Giannis well, too, I thought, frankly. Just, I don't know. We don't need to get into that. But I thought
games, yeah.
For a few games. And I thought more so that the scheme around Giannis and not being able to get enough help on him. There were other failures with the Suns. I don't think it was Ayton's defense on Giannis specifically. But also Giannis was just fucking legendary. But the biggest thing that Ayton did, I think, in the playoffs this year was go into a series like that where a team tried to throw a small ball at him for 6 games, and it just didn't work. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence going forward about team building around DeAndre Ayton, and can this thing actually work? Now, maybe it would have looked different with Kawhi in the game. As a matter of fact, I can tell you for a fact, it would have looked a little bit different if Kawhi was in the game. But it would have looked different for the reason that Kawhi is just such an effortlessly amazing scorer who can, would be able to score on whoever the Suns would have to throw at him. It would have been irrelevant to the fact of Ayton still could have been doing what he was doing, I think, all series long, even if they had a healthy Kawhi. I think Ayton, really, really proved a lot of doubters wrong in that series.
Can I go off on a tangent real quick? Something happened in the Nuggets series that I don't think you and I really talked about very much, and most people know it as the Suns in 4 guy. I was
actually going to ask you kind of about this, but okay, I'm curious to hear where this goes.
It was a fight that happened in the. I don't need to explain it.
Everyone knows. Arguably, it became more popular online than any of the other moments we're going to talk about this episode.
Yes, and I'm glad you framed it that way, because can I just say that sucks? That really sucks that became the thing that sort of defined casuals for the Suns in this series. Now, let me say that when I first saw this, I thought it was funny. And in fact, I think the only time that I even talked about it on the internet was to make a joke about Obi-Wan Kenobi having the high ground on the internet. I didn't find it to be something that really stuck out to me, but the lengths as it went, how popular it became, so much so that we had Suns fans on the internet telling us that they were hearing Suns in 4 all over the world. Literally all over the world.
I literally, a couple of weeks after that, if I would go out in Suns gear, which I do, not all the time, but definitely occasionally, I'll wear it out in public. And for years, no one ever comments in New York here, like on my son's gear. It very rarely happens. But for the couple weeks after that happened, like if I was in a bar, if I was in a coffee shop, a restaurant, wherever, like people would be like, Suns in 4. Like that was the thing they yelled at me. And I would be like, hey, yeah, what's up? Awesome. Suns in 4. Like I would play along with it. But yeah, it got old after like the third or fourth time for sure. It was cool. It was cool at the beginning though. Well,
no, I think it was cool. I think it was cool that the Suns swept that series after he said Suns in 4. Like that's a pretty legendary thing for it to happen. And I think when it happened, it was sort of popular, but like when the Suns also swept, it sort of like vaulted it into another level of like popularity because it was somewhat of this is now a prediction of something that happened. He predicted the Suns winning in 4. Obviously, it was the middle of the third game where they were winning by like 20 points. So it wasn't like this dramatic and insane prediction for it to happen. But I think like sort of, here's what I'll say. I respect his hustle, like this guy.
Absolutely.
I respect his hustle because look, I think he was in some ways he was sort of a victim of what happened as well. Obviously they poured a beer on his head and that's sort of what led, and he got sucker punched. That's what led to the fight in the first place. But I think in a way his sort of and look, if he's a listener, by the way, shout out to you, Suns in 4 guy. I don't know if
not.
His
name's Nick something, I forget, but he's definitely not a listener.
Look,
let me just say, I respect the hustle, and I respect the lengths the guy went to extend out, like to milk the 15 minutes a little bit and generate as much. Like he partnered with Barstool. I'm sure he got a ton of money from that, and like good for him. I honestly,
he's got a huge TikTok account now.
Inspiration. I think it's kind of inspirational in a way, and I also have no problems with the initial fight because it was self-defense.
Yeah.
Can I just get? We need to take a break soon, don't we? But before we do,
I'm going to put it in before this.
Okay. All right. All right, but this is like kind of our intermission because we're not talking about like other stuff right now in a way. Can we get a definitive ranking? I would refer to these guys as the four horsemen of the apocalypse of Suns fans.
Oh no. Okay.
Can we give me a definitive ranking? You've got Suns in 4 guy. Okay. Suns kid who ripped his shirt off. Okay. Right? That's wait, that's number 2. This isn't my ranking, by the way. I want your ranking.
Right.
Armband man, he's on Twitter. I forget his name.
Of course.
Armband man, vibes. You guys know who I'm
Kevin,
talking about.
I think his name is
Kevin. And I know where this guy's going to be ranked, but I have to throw him out there anyway. Wads of cash guy from the finals.
Yeah.
Give me your.
He's last. Kid taking off his shirt is like like an absolute Jeff Bezos style rocket to the number 1 spot of that one because how legendary was that? And I think if that moment happened on TV, because it didn't, like it happened at the arena, people tweeted about it, and then it ended up online afterwards. I think maybe some people watching on some like bootleg streams were able to see it when it happened, but not me.
I appreciated the memes for that one because they were wholesome, but they were also funny. It was like, remember this kid? He's the NBA MVP now, and it would like flash to a picture of Nikola Jokic, and then it would be like feel old yet, and I was like, yeah, that's good. That's.
I love too that it was like a performance, like it was something that he did and it worked. It wasn't like the Suns in 4 guy. I think he's number 2, and I think the sort of how it became sort of representative of the Suns fan base was not his fault, and that's the part that I don't particularly like or enjoy. That sort of become a rallying cry, and I don't want people fighting. I don't want that to represent us in any way. And in a lot of ways, the worst fans become the people who represent you because they draw the most attention on the internet, and he's not that. I think the guy counting his money is probably the worst representation.
How about the audacity to count like $1,000 in front of a guy sitting at the free throw line who makes $30 million a year? Like, isn't that? That's just stupid, man.
Part of what bothers me about the playoffs in general, but particularly the way that I'm going to call him out by name, Robert Sarver priced the ticket prices for these games, is that the people at the front of these playoff games, deeper and deeper into the playoffs, become less and less, in my opinion, sorry to the people who are there, representative of the fan base as a whole, the people who have been there for a lot of the games, because they just essentially get priced out of it. So I think a lot of times, not to say that people who have money can't be major basketball fans, they can, absolutely, but it's not like a clear cross-section of exactly who fans are of this team. It is a selective few that are able to afford that, and those are the ones that are on the shout out to Chris Hansen 8K cameras in the front.
He doesn't listen to the podcast. He's told me before.
That's right.
So
That's right. Somebody will tell him.
Yeah.
But those are the people that end up on it, and they're not to me not represent like that.
But
guy
the funny thing
money,
is,
like,
those people who get those tickets, I almost feel like if you're mega rich, you're either going to sit courtside or you're going to sit in nosebleeds. Yeah. And if you're fake rich, that's where you behave like an asshole, like that. But also, I've decided that Kevin, Armband Man, easily deserves number 2 after the kid here.
Dude is at every game this season. I mean,
because
like as a fan,
dude's a super fan who is at every game this season. But also, just like I have an appreciation for people who just kind of mind their own business and vibe and like enjoy themselves, but otherwise like they're not.
And they just get caught. Yeah, they're not playing it to the camera. Yeah,
exactly. That's what it was. He just got caught. He didn't like make a scene. You know?
Yeah. If everyone could enjoy basketball as much as he is. And instead of just turning it into this argument that, which is what happens a lot of times with, it's just people. The basketball would be in a better place because he definitely was vibing in the right possible way. But yeah, I think that's where I would rank it. And like I said, I don't want to make this a referendum on the Suns and 4 guy because, like I said, he's fine and I respect his hustle and everything. But I think the fact that I think more casuals will remember that specific moment than anything else that we're going to talk about on this podcast is just kind of unfortunate, I guess, is really how I want to frame it.
Yeah.
But there was another great moment, non-basketball related, that I just wanted to touch on, and this is Jay Crowder salsa dancing.
Oh, I didn't even think of that one.
I mean, that was just one of those moments, and it was a long time ago, Sam. Like, that was like a month and a half ago, maybe longer. I don't even know that even happened. But I think the Suns absolutely got clowned by the Lakers in Game 3 in the first round when Chris Paul could not even dribble. Another moment that people are going to forget about. Somebody who was barely capable of playing at that moment. And they're getting clowned, whether it be LeBron James laughing at Jay Crowder while he's posted up against him or Andre Drummond mimicking it on the sidelines. The Suns did not lose a game after that, and I think that was one of those moments where that brought them all a little closer together and caused them to refocus. And then, of course, at the end of the series, and I think people need to remember why this happened, Jay Crowder salsa danced at LeBron James when it was clear the Suns were going to win the series. Why? Because LeBron James had a commercial where he dances a salsa dance in some sort of, I don't know, Mountain Dew commercial. I don't know what it is. Sprite, maybe?
I don't remember why, but...
Yeah. And he's just mocked him, and then he got thrown out, and he sprinted to the locker room, which I think made it even funnier. But that's one of those moments I think that is sort of a legendary thing for a player to do. Like, there's not a lot of those, I think, for Suns players in the past, besides like Charles Barkley off the court. That was just a hilarious, hilarious moment that I'll remember forever.
Yeah, it was a fun taunt. Man, yeah. Jay Crowder had a good playoffs.
Yeah.
He kind of was like understated. Like, I feel like we're not really going to talk about him for the rest of this episode. So this is kind of the one chance to say it. Like, he just showed up and did his job, hit a lot of big threes, especially in the last series. Unfortunate that it didn't really pan out, but I mean, he did his job.
Absolutely. Every single moment it was like, okay, this is why we have him. Like the fact that the other fan bases hate him so much, that's why you get him. That's exactly why you want him on your team. He's the type of guy that gets on the nerves of the other team and the other fans. But all right, I'll let you go next. What's the next moment that you have?
Man, I don't even know who to choose. It's either got to be Devin Booker or Chris Paul at this point, but I don't know. Let's start with Devin Booker. So actually, there's 2 games we need to like cover with Devin Booker, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'll start with I'll start with the easy one. I think this is the second best Devin Booker game, and then I'll give you the game that I think is still like clearly Devin Booker's best game ever.
Okay.
But the game I'm talking about, Game 6 versus continue on from the Jay Crowder salsa dancing because it was the same game.
Same game, yeah.
Game 6 versus the Lakers. Close out. Devin Booker scores 47 points. He drops 8 threes. Remember, he had never hit more than 6. He drops 8 threes in this one. I think one of the things that I'm going to remember most fondly about this Suns series for a long time that I think is only going to be remembered actually by the diehards, it's going to be forgotten by time amongst the casuals and people who didn't follow this run that closely.
Suns 4. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things I'm going to remember, for those first 3 series, the Suns won on the road. And not only did they win on the road, Game 6 against the Lakers, Game 4 against the Nuggets, Game 6 against the Clippers, they were ruthless. They were barbaric in all of those games. Like, they blew those teams out. I think I'm going to remember that a lot. Like, Game 6 against the Lakers was just a first example. They were up by 20-plus by the end of the first quarter. And this, of course, was just a different Devin Booker because he was coming around screens, pulling up from 3, looking comfortable, like, in a way that he just doesn't typically look from that range. So the shot versatility just takes him to a whole different level and kind of makes him like defensive coverage proof in a way where you're like, sometimes you just got to throw up your hands and be like, I don't know what to do with this guy because he's just got us beat. And for him to do that on the road in Game 6, remember they tried to play Anthony Davis. The Suns threw a crazy first punch that took him out of the game within like 3 minutes. That was thanks to Chris Paul and Devin Booker just like going at him. They would just get the switch they wanted and then go at him, and he couldn't move side to side, had to come out of the game. And then they knocked him out. Like, that was really awesome. And I think that's going to be one of the things I most remember. I mean, obviously this was a huge game for Booker, 47 points in the playoffs. That's crazy. But just the team, kind of how they were able to embrace the moment there on the road and win all of those series, not make it difficult on themselves. I think Monty Williams talks about poise all the time. And that's really the best example we have of it, is the poise of such a young team to go out on the road and finish up their business was something that was really impressive about this squad.
Yeah, he was a killer. He was an absolute killer in that game. Mind you, I believe the Lakers, without Anthony Davis in the lineup, had the number 1 rated defensive efficiency of any team in the NBA that season. So it's not like he was doing this against... Yes, they were crippled without Anthony Davis, but they were still a very good defensive team without him on the floor, and he just killed him. He absolutely killed them, and it was a remarkable performance. It was one of those games where you're like, okay, he is that guy. Because I think both of us and a lot of Suns fans were pretty confident that he was going to do well in the playoffs. His game is sort of tailor-made for the type of game that's played in the playoffs offensively. And I think he came out in that game focused and ready. And I think with Devin Booker, like, you can't count on him to hit 8 threes. Obviously, he's only done it. Now, I guess he did it twice in the playoffs, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I think
he only did it once. He's done more than 6 twice, yeah.
Yeah, but like, to do it in that specific game, I think was just not a coincidence. It's just kind of who he's become. I talked about it before the playoffs even started. I just sort of listed out how he had all of these times where these sort of expectations were set for him, and then he exceeded, whether that be he was capped at 39 points. Everyone was waiting for him to score his first 40-point game, and then he scored 70 instead of scoring 41. He scored 70 immediately after that, and I think this was one of those moments where he was capped at 6 3-pointers, could not score more than 6, and then he scored 8 to eliminate the Los Angeles Lakers, and even beyond that, his first time making the playoffs, he made the NBA Finals. It's just one of those guys that his story is going to be written in a really fascinating way. For whatever reason, people are still really unable to talk about him in like the same way that they talk about other NBA players. There's like this mental block for a lot of people with how they talk about him. And I think even like beyond just what he did offensively in these playoffs, I think he showed something to me defensively where he's just not a liability in any way. No team could attack him defensively in a way that allowed them to be successful. He was not the weak point ever at any moment.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And it's just a remarkable thing for him to do. And beyond that, when we're talking about it, I'll just jump right into this other game since we're having the Devin Booker conversation right now. He had never had a triple-double in his career. The first game going into Los Angeles Clippers, the Suns were rolling, had just swept the Denver Nuggets. I wake up the day before, the day after, I think, the game, the Nuggets game, and then, of course, see a tweet from Woj about Chris Paul entering health and safety protocols, and it was a disaster. The Suns were playing the best basketball that they were playing.
That was such a weird period of time, too, right? Because that was when there was like a week-long break.
Yeah.
And it was just anxiety. It was weird. Mm-hmm.
So the Suns go into that game against the Clippers, who are, even with or without Kawhi Leonard, that's the worst matchup for the Suns in the playoffs, just with how they played defensively and the type of personnel that they have. That was the worst matchup for the Suns. And to go into that game with some incredible defenders guarding him, 40, 13, and 11, a 40-point triple-double. Here's some stats. Only 9 players ever have had 40-point triple-doubles in the playoffs. Only 9 players ever. The only players to do it younger than Devin Booker are Luka Doncic, who did it recently in the first round. That's all he's gotten. And Oscar Robertson. Right, 2 guys. I wanted to call him stat patters for a second there, but I don't mean that in a negative way.
I mean, he had 11 assists, but how many of those were potential assists? You know what I mean?
Maybe 30 or 40 potential assists, I think, at that point. Only one other player has ever had a 40-point triple-double in the Western Conference Finals. Can you guess who that player is?
Wait. Only one other player has had a 40-point triple-double in the Western Conference Finals, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
James Harden?
Charles Barkley.
Oh.
And you know the game. It was, I believe to make the NBA Finals and close out the Seattle Supersonics. So the only 2 players ever to have 40-point triple-doubles in the Western Conference Finals are Devin Booker and Charles Barkley.
Wait, I'm dumb. Harden has been in the conference finals, has he not? In the West?
Yes.
That one year. Okay. Yeah.
With Chris Paul, actually.
Yes. I was making sure that wasn't like a completely ridiculous guess, but Barkley makes more sense. I'll give you that.
Yeah. 40, 13, and 11. Without Chris Paul, the one player, once again, on the Suns to receive MVP votes. And Devin Booker went in there and had essentially a James Harden-ish game, if you will, but in a way that led to a victory. Arguably one of the greatest Suns games ever played. I think you could list it in top 5 without doing any research, just top 5, and I think you could make the case that it was the greatest Suns game ever played, maybe outside of that one by Charles Barkley. An incredible game.
Totally agreed. I mean, they had no answer for him. I remember at that point they were giving switches onto him, and it didn't matter who it was. I hate to sound like a broken record, but when he has the 3 on top of everything else, there's nothing you can do. There's really nothing.
3 for 7.
He was 3 for 7, but I remember like all 3 of the makes were difficult self-created pull-ups. They weren't just like, there he is on the wing spotting up. He was going out there and getting it himself after a screen. And it really just makes it so that it's like you can't do anything with him. Like they were sending Morris, he cooked Morris. They would send Batum, he cooked Batum. They would send, Reggie Jackson, he'd cook Reggie Jackson. Like it didn't matter who it was on the team at that point. It was his best game ever, no doubt. 40 points on 29 shots. Get the fuck out of here. Come on.
It's insane. And plus the 13 and 11, 13 rebounds, 11 assists. And look, a lot of people will point at that Clippers series and say he struggled. Well, guess what happened the next game? He broke his nose in 3 places and had it just cracked back into place without surgery that was probably needed at that point. That's an important moment for why he struggled in that series. Once he got over that, appeared to get over it, he started playing a lot better, and it's not a coincidence. That's what slowed him down more than anything. Yes, credit to Patrick Beverley in his great defense, but what happened in that series is we were robbed of what could have been with Devin Booker when his nose was broken at that moment, because I think we could have seen some other legendary performances, and we did later on. And I think the most obvious thing that we have yet to talk about, a most obvious game, I think we both have, and I'll let you cover that one. But before we get to that game, do you have any like honorable mentions that you want to get to before we talk about that final moment? I think that we both have on our list here.
Yeah, I think honorable mention goes to Cam Johnson getting the dunk of the playoffs on PJ Tucker.
That's exactly what I had.
Gotta be, right? I mean, it just sucked because that came in such a brutal loss. Otherwise, like it just wasn't a fun game. But again, is going to be like when I think of just 10-second clips that you could take from this playoff series and put into any highlight reel of like what's going to live on for the next decade. When people think like, what are the first plays they're going to think of? It's going to be that, and it's going to be the Valley Oop. I think those are the 2 plays. They were way better, great individual performances from Booker and Paul, but you know how Booker and Paul are. They're like crafty mid-range scorers who aren't necessarily like, there's an audience for that in highlight reels, but it's not like poster dunks and, game-winning shots. Those things are always going to be the top moments. So
you know who watched the Chris Paul and Devin Booker? Hoopers will watch that. Basketball players will watch the other ones.
Nice reference.
Yeah.
Quickly, by the way, I just want to say Booker final line in the playoffs: 27.3 points, 5.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 56% true shooting. Not bad.
No,
not bad
Not
for
bad
kids
at all.
for kids' first playoff run.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to figure out his true shooting percentage if we took out like the 2 games after he broke his nose, because I think those kind of sunk his efficiency in a lot of ways. Because with that mask, he just was not playing well until he took it off.
And again, I like this Clippers series was so crazy because he struggled for the rest of that series. But like I said, game 2 was the campaign game, game 4 was the DeAndre Ayton game, and then game 6. This is the one.
Yep.
Right.
This is the moment.
This is the one. Was Chris Paul just painting his masterpiece, and why it sucks so much that people are just stupid, that human beings are just, they lack the intelligence to, like, they have the audacity to criticize Chris Paul for making it to the playoffs when he already gave us moments like game 6 against the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. 41 points, 8 assists, 0 turnovers on 16 of 24 shooting. And granted, he also was crazy in the Nuggets closeout.
Yeah.
Right? He had 30 he had 37 and 7. So that's another honorable mention actually. 37 and 7 game 4 against the Nuggets, but didn't carry the same urgency as a game 6. Obviously. So game 6, still on the road, 41-8, 0 turnovers, made basically every shot. He was getting to the rim in this game too. That's the thing I love about Chris Paul so much when he's at least fully healthy, is when he understands that he needs to seize the moment, he does get to the rim and he hits you with, he ISOs and then he hits you with his drop step, his hesitation, and he'll get right past you if he's, has that chance. This was a game where he did that and he ripped their heart out. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was like a 25-point blowout win for the Suns in Game 6. Remember, he had that long celebration at the end. It's just like, to go and criticize that guy now based on what happened in the finals, when, like, if the Suns had just lost in the first round like everyone expected them to, Chris Paul would be seeing less slander than he is right now. And it's the same thing that people did to LeBron James for years and years. It's like, it is always better to get to the finals than to lose in the first or second round. There's no reason to reward people for losing earlier in the playoffs. But I guess it's just because on that final stage, everyone is watching. And before that final stage, maybe not everyone is watching. So you forget about the clunkers, the stinkers that other guys have in the first or second round if they lose. Those fade with time. The finals is a little bit tougher. But this was the peak of Chris Paul. Game 6 versus the Clippers, Western Conference Finals, also goes down, I think, as one of the top Phoenix Suns performances of all time.
Yes.
Where is it exactly? I don't know. I don't really know. Is it top 5? Might be top 5.
Yeah, I think you make it to the NBA Finals with that. That's what it did. There was a moment, and we all know it, where Chris Paul was isolating at the top of the key, where Devin Booker was literally just standing at half court and not even paying attention because of how hot Chris Paul was at that moment. And Chris Paul just sunk a 3 right in the defender's face. I forget which defender it was, maybe Batum at that point of the game. And it was just one of those ones where it's like, this guy is controlling the game so skillfully and so easily that you could act a little cocky at that point. And Devin Booker was afforded that opportunity to do it. And I think just to your point about the narratives around Chris Paul, people are not, NBA fans in general, and these are the worst of them in a lot of ways, are just not capable of having a rational conversation about Chris Paul. People even tried to make the case that his legacy somehow got worse in this specific year. Mind you, Chris Paul in this game, 36 years old, had his highest scoring game in the playoffs ever, tied with a 2018 game that he had against the Jazz, which in my opinion is one of the greatest basketball games I've ever seen played in that specific game against the Jazz. It's also the second highest ever game by that Basketball Reference game score that he has had in the playoffs at 36 years old, and that's what got them into the NBA Finals. And not only that, it was against his old team on their floor.
Well, and remember,
I mean,
then he also had that speech at the end where he thanked the Clippers fans,
Yes.
and he was like, I will always be a Clipper. I enjoyed my 6 years here. Sorry we couldn't get further. I don't know. I mean,
Billy Crystal's my friend.
Billy Crystal is my friend.
Yeah.
Everyone on the Clippers roster is like, who? Who's Billy Crystal?
Billy Crystal.
Yeah, to call that guy a choker after he had games like that, like to close out the Nuggets with 37, to close out the Clippers with 41. I don't know. To quote a great 21st century philosopher, my good friend Kevin Durant, NBA fans don't like anything about the NBA, and it's weird.
Yes. Can I say
think
something too?
That's a good example of that. Yeah,
I think we've gotten to the point where Steph Curry fans are just as bad as LeBron fans.
Oh, you think we're there? You think we're there?
I think we're there now, because it's no longer about sort of defending Steph against people who sort of try to undercut his legacy in a lot of ways. Why legacy talk is always stupid.
Sam from the Light Years podcast might listen to this, so I would watch what you're saying right now.
Well, he can tell Andy, because it's not Sam, it's Andy.
I know it's absolutely Andy. It's 100% Andy.
And I know it's always with Andy. It's like, I don't know. It's like a show. It's not real. It's theater. His tweets, but with other NBA fans, with other Steph fans, I think it is too, right? They're not even making rational arguments. They're not even trying to be somebody having a discourse about basketball. It's more about just sort of being a stan, being a fan. And I think those people, both of them, LeBron and Steph fans, are the ones that are sort of attacking Chris Paul for this year in order to build up their own guy. It's not even about necessarily what Chris Paul did. It's about trying to build up their own guy. And that's just unfortunate.
Why do we allow stan culture to just ruin everything? Steph Curry's one of my favorite players of this generation. I like
LeBron and Steph. Yeah.
They're both awesome. I like them a lot. Also, why doesn't Chris Paul have stans? Is he really that unlikable?
There's a few that listen to this podcast.
I like Chris Paul a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I consider myself of an emotional maturity to where I don't stan anything. So to speak, I don't stand Chris Paul, but I wonder why he doesn't have that same level of toxicity about him. No championship.
I think the championship is sort of this trump card that you can throw on top of everything when you're having arguments with people online. By the way, stan culture is about those arguments. It's not ultimately
it's theater, like you just said. It's theater.
It's yes, and you're not actually talking about basketball when you're a stan, if you will, like a super fan. That you're just having a conversation about legacy. And this is sort of, I think this is a byproduct of the sort of argument, the argument culture of ESPN, where as soon as Giannis wins a title, it's about who's better, KD or Giannis all time. It's like you don't even get a moment to celebrate Giannis's championship and the amazing story that he has had. It immediately becomes an argument about this or that, and that's always going to be stupid. And what it begets, what comes from it, is these people online who are unable to celebrate a really cool moment, I think, for Chris Paul. And also, look, a really sad moment, too. I think when the finals game, the final buzzer ended and the Suns were eliminated from finals contention, the person I felt the most bad for was Chris Paul.
Sure.
I mean, and it's unfortunate that instead of people sort of having that sort of empathy and that cathartic moment, if you will, or
empathy,
empathy
on the internet. Who are you? I mean, come on.
Their first thing to do is to try to make him feel worse.
Have we
and
learned?
The people who like him feel worse. That's a bizarre thing.
You've been on the internet. Mm-hmm. You're a Reddit moderator, and you're talking about empathy on the internet. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. We know the rules. We know how it works.
Yeah.
Man, it sucks though. Are they going to ruin? Are they going to ruin Giannis for us too?
No, that'd be really hard to do. Because look, I still like Steph. I still really like Steph a lot, and I do like LeBron a lot too. I think LeBron has gotten a little performative himself later in his life, but I still enjoy him on the court. As soon as I watch him play, unless it's versus the Suns in the playoffs, but. I don't think they are. But back to Chris Paul, because I think we're getting sidetracked about that. For him to have this moment, I think is going to be something that, as fans, we need to sort of praise it for what it is. And I think it's kind of unfortunate that, like I said, there's really not a moment to look back and appreciate it other than right now, because the draft is in a few days, a week from today. And now we have the moment to look back and say what Chris Paul did against the Nuggets, at times against the Lakers, specifically Game 1, and then against the Clippers was incredible and remarkable, and it got him to the NBA Finals. And it's up to the Suns, I think, now to do the best things that they can to get him into that position again going forward, which is something that you and I are going to talk about for a while on this podcast before next season begins.
It would be remiss of me, because I did it with Booker, not to bring up Chris Paul's final stat line. So it was 19.2 points, 8.6 assists, only 2.2 turnovers in the playoffs, on 50% from the field, 45 from deep, 88 from the free throw line.
Yeah, and that's being unable to move his right arm, essentially, at moments in the Lakers series.
And
battling
COVID.
Yeah, and then some sort of left wrist injury that I think we're probably going to hear about at some point in this offseason to make sure that he comes back fully healthy. If anything needs to happen to help fix that, I think we're going to hear about it, because that's something that I think affected him a lot in the final round. As you can see, this game he had against the Clippers was the last game before the Bucks series. He didn't have a game like that again. Partial credit to the Bucks defense, but something also I think was bothering Chris Paul, and that's not a coincidence. So an incredible performance, an incredible run all around for the Phoenix Suns. And I think for Suns fans, it's going to hurt. It's going to suck for a while. But I think if anything, if you're listening to this podcast, take a moment to appreciate what James Jones did, what Monty Williams did, what Devin Booker did, what Chris Paul did. And there's players and moments, I think, like I said, I went off the top of my mind here, off my memory. There's moments that we forgot about. And we'd love to hear you tell us about them online. What stood out to you, whether it be Mikal Bridges' game in the finals, like that's another one I think that we could get shouted out to, or any other moment that stood out to you. But Sam, you got anything else before we get going on this one?
Is it corny if we talk about ourselves for a minute? Because I think this would probably be the moment to do it, if we were going to do it at all.
I mean, people could turn it off if they don't want to hear it. So.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know. We just haven't really had the chance to do it. We've recorded so many podcasts over the past 2 months, staying up late.
Yeah.
I haven't slept much recently because I work early in the morning on the East Coast, so these late night pods have been difficult for me at times.
Let me just tell you, just for people to understand this, regularly Sam would be awake and getting ready for work when I was going to bed here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
That happened pretty regularly.
Yeah, so that's not going to be a regular thing. It'll be a thing in the playoffs next year too. I hope that they have another great playoff run, and I would gladly do it again. But it can't be a thing for me for more than like 2 months out of the year, because it'll kill me. Yeah, I mean, just to anyone, whether you're an old listener from the beginning or a new listener, as we found many of you guys throughout the past couple months, a sincere thank you for following us along this journey. It's been a remarkable ride. And I guess I would just echo what I said at the beginning of this is just the beginning. I think what the Suns have done this year, as much as it sucks to feel this way, if you're still feeling a little bit down, they've set a foundation, not only with their talent, but with their culture, I think is something we can take away from this season. I don't think there are any Suns fans out there who don't trust Monty Williams, who don't trust James Jones going into the future. I feel like that's a really rare place for a fan base to be. Just the utmost trust in both their front office management and their coaching staff. So now it's just about, finding ways to optimize the roster a little bit better, get some more talent, I think. But you can bring these guys back for the most part, add some other pieces, get some internal development over this short offseason, and, I think they've got a really bright future. And we, obviously, Mike and I, are looking forward to covering it all next season. So thank you to anyone who's joined us. Also, I would just remind you guys, if you haven't, I nag people about it every once in a while, drop us a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Sorry. It helps a lot if you get a spare moment to do that. So, but that would basically be all I have to say, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because yes, it's been a fun run for us too. And as tired as we are, I can imagine what the players feel like. But it was really fun to be able to cover this team this year, even with the unfortunate ending. And I appreciate those who joined us since the beginning and those who joined us more recently. July 29th is the NBA draft.
Jesus Christ.
August 2nd is NBA free agency. And then the season starts mid-October. That means we have a short time until Summer League, and then a short time until training camp and preseason. It's going to fly.
It might not seem like it now because it's only a couple months, but even a couple months is still enough time. Like, free agency is going to die down. By the way, I've been working all week I'm gonna start like resting next week, but just to tease something I have coming up, I've been working all week on a free agent series for YouTube. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't. You're gonna want to be paying attention to that next week because there's gonna be a lot of free agent content. Like I said, we're not draft people, but I love free agency, and so hopefully we can be a go-to resource for you guys about that. But a couple months of an off season might seem short, but there will be enough time there, I think, Mike, for us to sneak some like bullshit topics in. Of just like there will be a couple of quiet weeks where nothing happens, and we're just kind of back to debating some silliness. But I'm almost looking forward to that.
All right, we'll be back soon to preview the NBA draft.